My name is Emily Carter. I'm 32 years old, and for the last 4 years, I've been living inside a body that constantly betrays me. Most people can't see it. That's the problem. If I had crutches, a cast, stitches, or scars, maybe people would understand. Maybe they'd look at me and immediately know something hurt. But fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue syndrome don't work that way. Pain hides beneath skin. Exhaustion disguises itself behind forced smiles and makeup and practiced politeness. And people only believe what they can see. I learned that lesson long before I met my boyfriend, Daniel. But Daniel was different. He never looked at me like I was lazy, never sighed when I canceled plans, never acted inconvenienced when my body shut down halfway through the day. He sat beside me through every specialist appointment, every blood test, every humiliating moment where doctors questioned whether my pain was stress-related. I still remember one night during our second year together when I collapsed in the kitchen because my legs simply gave out beneath me. I was embarrassed more than hurt. I started apologizing immediately. "I'm sorry," I whispered from the floor. "I'm ruining dinner again." Daniel dropped to his knees beside me so fast it scared me. "Emily," he said softly, brushing hair from my face, "stop apologizing for being in pain." No one had ever said that to me before. Not my old friends who disappeared because I canceled too much. Not my former boss who hinted I was unreliable. Not even my own relatives who treated my diagnosis like an unfortunate personality trait instead of a medical condition. Daniel did. And because of him, I started believing maybe I wasn't broken. Unfortunately, his family never saw me the way he did. His mother, Patricia, had opinions about everything. Loud opinions. Exhausting opinions. She wasn't cruel in obvious ways at first. She specialized in polished cruelty, the kind hidden behind smiles and fake concern. "Oh, sweetheart," she'd say at dinner, "you're tired again?" Or, "You're so young to have all these problems." Or, my personal favorite, "You know, sometimes staying active helps people more than medication." Always delivered with that sweet, careful tone designed to make me look unreasonable if I reacted badly. Daniel usually shut her down quickly. But the comments kept coming. His older sister, Vanessa, inherited Patricia's talent for subtle humiliation. She was beautiful, successful, loud, and effortlessly confident. The kind of woman who made everyone in a room orbit around her without trying. At least according to Patricia. Vanessa could do no wrong. If she snapped at someone, she was stressed. If she forgot something important, she was busy. If I quietly left a family gathering early because my joints felt like they were filled with shattered glass, I was dramatic. At first, I convinced myself I could handle it. Every family has tension. Every family has difficult personalities. But things changed 6 months before Christmas. Daniel's cousin got married in October, and I spent nearly an entire week preparing myself physically just to attend the wedding. Extra sleep, extra hydration, medication adjustments, stretching, pain patches hidden beneath my dress. I wanted one normal evening. Just one. And for the first hour, it worked. The ceremony was beautiful. Daniel looked handsome in his navy suit. He kept squeezing my hand beneath the dinner table, smiling at me like I was the only person in the room. I almost forgot how tired I was. Then the reception started. The music became louder, the lights brighter. My muscles tightened slowly, then all at once. By the second hour, pain spread through my shoulders and spine like fire crawling beneath my skin. I tried hiding it. I always tried hiding it. But Daniel noticed immediately. "You're fading," he whispered gently. "I'm okay." "You're clenching your jaw." I hadn't even realized I was doing it. He looked at me for another few seconds before quietly saying, "We're leaving." Guilt hit me instantly. "Daniel, no, it's your cousin's wedding. And you're in pain." "I can push through." His expression softened in that heartbreaking way that always made me want to cry. "You shouldn't have to." So we left quietly. No scene, no announcement. At least, that's what I thought. 3 days later, Daniel came home furious. Not irritated. Furious. I heard the front door slam so hard, the picture frames rattled. He walked into the living room, holding his phone like he wanted to throw it through a wall. "What happened?" I asked carefully. His jaw tightened. My cousin told me what my mother said after we left the wedding. My stomach dropped immediately, because deep down, I already knew. Daniel paced across the room. She told everyone you were jealous of the bride getting attention. I stared at him silently. He kept going. She said you always find a way to make events about yourself. His voice cracked with disbelief. And apparently you have a pattern of conveniently getting sick whenever things aren't focused on you. The room suddenly felt cold. Embarrassment burned through me first. Then shame. Then that familiar, awful feeling of wondering whether maybe everyone secretly thought the same thing. Daniel noticed my expression immediately. "Hey," he said firmly, kneeling beside me. "Don't do that." "Do what?" "That thing where you blame yourself for other people being cruel." I looked away before he could see tears forming. But he already knew. He always knew. That night, he called Patricia, and the argument lasted nearly an hour. I heard parts of it from the bedroom. "You don't know what you're talking about." "No, Mom. Google doesn't make you a doctor." "She's not faking anything." "Do you hear yourself right now?" Then, silence. Then, louder silence. Then, finally, "If you can't respect her, you're going to lose me, too." I'd never heard Daniel speak to his mother like that before. But things only got worse after that conversation. Patricia became bolder. Crueler. Like Daniel challenging her only made her more determined to prove she was right. She started sending him articles about positive thinking and exercise cures for chronic pain. She'd ask if I was having another episode whenever I sat quietly during family dinners. One Thanksgiving, she looked directly at me and laughed lightly. "I wish I had an excuse to nap as much as you do." Everyone chuckled awkwardly. I forced a smile, while my face burned with humiliation. Daniel squeezed my thigh beneath the table, hard enough to silently say, "I heard it too." But the real breaking point came at Christmas. Ironically, I almost didn't go. The week before Christmas Eve, I had a flare-up so severe I could barely shower without sitting down halfway through. But by some miracle, my symptoms eased 2 days before dinner. I took it as a sign. Maybe this year would be different. Maybe Patricia was finally calming down. Maybe I was stupid. I even baked Daniel's favorite chocolate pecan pie from scratch, despite the pain in my wrists. I wanted to contribute something. Wanted his family to see I was trying. When we arrived at Patricia and Richard's house around 6 in the evening, everything seemed normal. Warm lights glowed through the windows. Christmas music played softly in the background. Vanessa showed off photos from her new marketing job in Chicago. Richard talked football with Daniel. And Patricia smiled at me like nothing had ever happened. That should have scared me more than it did. Dinner started pleasantly enough. For almost an hour, I relaxed. Then Richard mentioned hurting his back while doing yard work. Patricia immediately fussed over him. "You need to see a doctor tomorrow," she said. "I'll pick up your prescriptions if you need me to." That's when Vanessa looked directly at me with a smile too sharp to be kind. "Well," she said lightly, "Emily's basically a chronic pain expert at this point." Something about her tone made my stomach tighten. Still, I answered politely. "Back injuries are different from fibromyalgia," I explained carefully. "But pain can definitely wear you down emotionally." Patricia snorted. Actually snorted. "Oh, please," she said. "Let's not compare your imaginary illness to Richard's actual injury." The table went quiet. Daniel stiffened beside me. I swallowed carefully. "Chronic pain is still real pain," I said calmly. And that's when Patricia finally exploded. Years of judgment poured out of her all at once. She said she was tired of pretending, tired of watching me manipulate her son with fake illnesses, tired of everyone walking on eggshells around me. She called fibromyalgia made-up nonsense. Said doctors diagnosed it when they couldn't figure out what was actually wrong with lazy people. Said women my age wanted excuses for everything. Then she looked directly into my eyes. "I know exactly what you're doing," she snapped. "You just want everyone catering to you because you don't want to function like a normal adult." I stopped breathing. Vanessa stared at her plate. Richard said nothing. Daniel looked horrified. But Patricia wasn't done. "This is all in your head," she continued. "And honestly, everyone sees it." The room disappeared around me after that. Not literally, but emotionally. like something inside me quietly detached. I realized in that moment that no explanation would ever matter to someone determined not to understand. So instead of defending myself, I stood up.
Calmly. Quietly.
"Excuse me," I said. Daniel immediately rose from his chair. "Emily." But I was already walking toward the front door. Daniel followed me into the hallway. "Emily, wait. Please." I grabbed my coat with hands that didn't feel like mine. "I'm going home." "I'm coming with you." "No." My voice surprised both of us. It was quiet, but firm. "You should stay with your family." His face broke. "They just humiliated you." "I know." "Then why would I stay?" "Because I need space," I whispered. "And because I need to know what happens when I'm not in the room." That stopped him. For a second, all we heard was Patricia's voice from the dining room, sharp and offended. "She's being dramatic again." Daniel's expression changed. Something hardened behind his eyes. I opened the door, stepped into the freezing night, and walked to my car without looking back. The 3-hour drive home felt unreal. Christmas lights blurred past the windshield. Holiday songs played quietly from the radio until I shut them off because they felt cruel. My hands trembled on the steering wheel, but I didn't cry. Not at first. I kept hearing Patricia's voice.
Imaginary illness. Lazy. Everyone sees it.
By the time I reached our apartment, I was so numb I forgot to turn on the lights. I just sat on the couch in the dark, still wearing my coat, staring at the little Christmas tree Daniel and I had decorated together. Then I turned off my phone. For the first time in months, the silence felt merciful. No defending myself, no explaining, no pretending I wasn't hurt. Just silence. 3 hours later, I turned my phone back on. There were 17 missed calls from Daniel. Before I could even process them, his name flashed again. I answered. "Emily?" His voice was broken, and Daniel never sounded broken. "I'm here," I said. He exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for hours. "I'm so sorry." That was all it took. The tears finally came. He kept apologizing, but not in a rushed, panicked way, in a devastated way, like he had finally understood the full weight of every moment I had swallowed to keep peace with his family. "I should have stopped this sooner," he said. "I kept thinking I could manage it, correct them, smooth things over, but I was just making you stand there while they kept cutting you." "What happened after I left?" I asked. For a moment, he was quiet. Then he told me. After I walked out, Patricia tried to sit back down as if nothing had happened. She actually picked up her fork. "Well," she said, "that was unnecessary. Can we please finish dinner?" Daniel didn't sit. He stood at the table, staring at his mother as if he'd never seen her clearly before. "No," he said, "we're not finishing dinner." Patricia rolled her eyes. "Oh, don't start." But Daniel did start. And once he started, he didn't stop. He told them what fibromyalgia was. Not vaguely, not emotionally. Clearly, precisely. He explained the diagnosis, the specialists, the medications, the flare-ups, the brain fog, the days when I woke up already exhausted before my feet even touched the floor. He told them about the appointments I never mentioned because I didn't want pity. He told them about the nights he found me crying quietly in the bathroom because I didn't want him to hear. He told them about the times I cooked for their birthdays, wrapped their gifts, remembered their preferences, smiled through pain, and still got treated like a burden. Vanessa started crying first. "She never said it was that bad," she whispered. Daniel snapped back. "She shouldn't have had to." Richard looked ashamed. Patricia looked furious. Daniel pulled out his phone and began reading medical information from reputable sources. He explained that fibromyalgia was recognized by major medical organizations, that it affected the nervous system, that chronic fatigue syndrome was not being tired, but a condition that could completely disrupt a person's life. Patricia interrupted him twice. Both times, Daniel kept going. Then he told them something I hadn't known he would ever share. The emergency room visit. 3 months earlier, I'd had a flare so severe I could barely move. The ER doctor had treated me like I was exaggerating until my records came through. Only then did his tone change. Only then did he apologize. I still remembered the humiliation of lying there, in pain, while someone looked at me like I was trying to trick him. Daniel's voice cracked when he told them. She was treated like a criminal for being in pain, he said. And then she came here afterward and smiled at all of you. No one spoke. Then Patricia muttered, "Doctors don't know everything." That was when Daniel finally broke. "No," he said coldly, "but you know nothing." According to him, the room went dead silent. Then he looked at Vanessa. "You made jokes." Vanessa covered her mouth. He looked at Richard. "You let Mom say whatever she wanted because it was easier." Richard lowered his eyes. Then he looked at Patricia. "And you attacked the woman I love because admitting you were wrong would hurt your pride." Patricia started crying then, but Daniel said it didn't feel like guilt. It felt like rage wearing tears as a costume. "She turned you against us," Patricia said. Daniel laughed once, without humor. "No, you did that yourself." Then he said the words I never expected him to say. "If you can't apologize to Emily and actually educate yourself, I'm done. No dinners, no holidays, no family events. I won't keep bringing her somewhere she gets punished for being sick." Vanessa sobbed harder. Richard tried to calm everyone down. Patricia screamed that I was destroying her family. Daniel picked up his coat. "No," he said. "I'm finally protecting mine." Then he left. When Daniel got home, he looked like he had aged years in one night. I opened the door before he could knock. For a second, we just stared at each other. Then he stepped forward and wrapped his arms around me so tightly I could feel him shaking. "I chose you," he whispered. I closed my eyes. For the first time all night, I felt safe. We spent Christmas Day alone. No big dinner, no matching pajamas, no family photos in front of a fireplace. Just takeout containers, old movies, a blanket over my legs, and Daniel's hand holding mine like he was afraid I might disappear. And somehow, it was the best Christmas I'd had in years. Because no one asked me to prove I was hurting. No one punished me for needing rest. No one made me feel like love had to be earned by suffering quietly. But by the next morning, the messages started. Vanessa texted first. "Emily, I am so sorry. I didn't understand. That doesn't excuse anything. Please let me apologize properly when you're ready." Then Richard sent a card. Not a text. A real card. His handwriting was shaky. "I failed you by staying silent. I am ashamed of that. I hope one day you'll allow me to do better." Patricia didn't apologize. At least, not at first. She called Daniel repeatedly, left voicemails, sent long texts accusing him of abandoning his family, saying I had manipulated him, saying she was the real victim because one mistake had cost her Christmas with her son. One mistake. That's what she called years of cruelty. Daniel didn't respond. 3 days later, Vanessa asked if she could come by. I almost said no. But something in her message felt different. Not polished, not performative. When she arrived, she looked nothing like the confident woman who used to glide through family dinners like she owned the room. Her eyes were swollen, her hands twisted nervously around a paper bag. "I brought tea," she said awkwardly, "and heating patches." I didn't know what was actually helpful, so I guessed. I looked at Daniel. He gave me a quiet nod, letting me decide. So I let her in. Vanessa sat on the edge of the couch like she didn't deserve comfort. "I was cruel," she said. "No excuses, no explanations. Just the truth. I thought because you looked fine, you were fine. And I let Mom's opinion become mine because it was easier than questioning her." Her voice shook. "I'm sorry, Emily. Not because Daniel is angry. Because I hurt you." That mattered. More than I expected. I didn't forgive her immediately, but I believed she was ashamed. And sometimes, shame is where change begins. Still, Patricia remained a storm outside the walls of our quiet apartment. Until one evening, my phone rang. Her name appeared on the screen. Patricia Hale. I stared at it until the ringing nearly stopped. Daniel looked up from the kitchen. "You don't have to answer." "I know. But curiosity is a dangerous thing." So I answered. For several seconds, I heard only breathing. Then Patricia said my name. Not sharply. Not falsely sweet. Softly. "Emily." I didn't respond. She started crying. I was wrong. The sentence was so unexpected that I almost thought I had misheard her. She continued, voice trembling. I've been reading about fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, pain processing. I didn't know. My throat tightened. Part of me wanted to scream that not knowing had never stopped her from judging me, but I stayed silent. I said terrible things, she whispered. Cruel things, and I can't take them back. No, I said quietly. You can't. She cried harder. I'm sorry. I closed my eyes. There it was. The apology I thought I would never hear. And somehow, it didn't fix anything. It only opened the door to everything that still hurt. I appreciate you saying that, I told her. But I need time. I understand. I don't know if this is real, I added. Or if you're just afraid of losing Daniel. She was silent for a long moment. Then she said, maybe it started that way. My chest tightened. But it isn't only that now, she continued. I saw his face that night. I heard what he said. And for the first time, I wondered what kind of woman I had become. That was the first thing she said that truly unsettled me, because it sounded honest. Not perfect. Not clean. But honest. I don't forgive you yet, I said. I know. And I won't pretend nothing happened. I'm not asking you to. For once, Patricia didn't argue. And that scared me more than her anger ever had. Because anger was familiar. Change was not. The weeks after New Year's felt strangely fragile, like everyone was walking across thin ice, waiting to see what would crack first. Daniel became more protective than ever, though he tried not to make it obvious. He checked in with me constantly without smothering me. If I got quiet during errands, he'd gently ask whether I needed to sit down. If I woke up exhausted, he handled breakfast and medication without making me feel guilty for staying in bed. But underneath his tenderness, I could feel something else. Fear. Not fear of my illness. Fear of losing me because he hadn't protected me soon enough. One rainy evening in January, I found him sitting alone on the balcony, staring into the dark parking lot below our apartment. You okay? I asked softly. He nodded too quickly. That meant no. I sat beside him carefully, wrapping a blanket tighter around my shoulders. After a long silence, he finally spoke. I keep replaying Christmas dinner in my head. His jaw tightened. I should have stopped her years ago. You defended me. Too late. The pain in his voice hurt almost more than Patricia's insults ever had. I touched his hand gently. Daniel, you can't rewrite the past. No, he said quietly. But I could have stopped pretending it wasn't getting worse. Rain tapped softly against the balcony railing. I thought if I kept things calm, eventually Mom would come around. I kept asking you to be patient because I didn't want to lose either side. He swallowed hard. But every compromise came out of your skin. That sentence stayed with me. Every compromise came out of your skin. Because he was right. I had spent years shrinking myself to make everyone else comfortable, monitoring my expressions, hiding pain, pretending comments didn't hurt, forcing smiles so nobody accused me of ruining the mood. I had treated my own suffering like an inconvenience. And somewhere along the way, I forgot that surviving something difficult didn't mean I deserved disrespect. A week later, Patricia asked if I would meet her for lunch. My first instinct was immediate rejection. Absolutely not. But the request lingered in my mind longer than I expected. She might actually be trying, Daniel said carefully when washing dishes. She also called my illness fake for years. I know. She humiliated me in front of your entire family. I know. And now suddenly she's researching medical journals? Daniel dried his hands slowly. I'm not asking you to forgive her, he said. I just think people sometimes change when consequences finally become real. That was the problem. I didn't know whether Patricia was changing because she understood my pain, or because she finally understood Daniel would leave. Still, curiosity won again. So the following Saturday, I met Patricia at a quiet restaurant downtown. The second I walked inside, I almost turned around. Not because of her, because of how nervous she looked. Patricia Hale had always carried herself like a woman completely certain of everything. Perfect posture, sharp voice, immaculate appearance. Even her judgment usually sounded polished. But the woman sitting near the window looked smaller somehow. Tired. When she saw me approaching, she stood immediately. "Thank you for coming." I nodded cautiously and sat across from her. For several uncomfortable seconds, neither of us touched the menus. Then Patricia took a shaky breath. "I spent Christmas night researching fibromyalgia." I stayed silent. At first, I only did it because Daniel looked at me like he hated me. Her honesty startled me again. But the more I read, she swallowed hard, the more horrified I became. Outside, rain streaked softly across the windows. Patricia looked down at her hands. "I thought people with chronic illnesses just needed discipline. I thought pushing through pain was strength." A bitter laugh escaped her. "That's how I was raised." I studied her carefully. For once, there was no performance in her face, only shame. "I grew up in a family where weakness was embarrassing," she continued quietly. "My father worked through broken ribs once because missing work wasn't acceptable. My mother cooked dinner 2 days after surgery." She looked up at me. "So when I saw you resting, slowing down, canceling things," her eyes filled with tears, "I judged you because I thought enduring pain silently was what good people did." Something inside me softened slightly. Not enough to erase anything, but enough to listen. Then Patricia said something I never expected. "I have arthritis." I blinked. "What?" She gave a humorless smile. "Have had it for years." I stared at her. "You never told anyone." "Exactly." She rubbed her hands together unconsciously. "Some mornings I can barely close my fingers," her voice trembled. "But I hid it because I didn't want anyone thinking I was weak." The realization hit me slowly. Patricia hadn't just judged me. She had spent years punishing herself, too. "I think," she whispered, "seeing you openly need help made me angry because I never allowed myself that same grace." The restaurant suddenly felt very quiet. For the first time since meeting her, I saw not just cruelty, but fear. Fear of vulnerability, fear of aging, fear of weakness, fear of losing control. None of it excused what she did, but it explained some of it. "I was still cruel," she said immediately, as if reading my thoughts, "and I know that." I nodded once. "Yes, you were." She accepted it without defensiveness. Then she asked softly, "Would you tell me what it's actually like?" That question almost broke me, because nobody in Daniel's family had ever asked to understand before. They only questioned,
Defended.
dismissed. So slowly, carefully, I told her. I told her about waking up feeling exhausted before the day even started. About the stiffness in my muscles every morning that made simple tasks feel enormous. About brain fog so bad sometimes I forgot words halfway through sentences. About forcing myself through work smiling while feeling like my bones were vibrating with pain. About how humiliating it was to constantly calculate whether my body could survive ordinary activities other people never thought twice about. Patricia listened silently the entire time. No interruptions. No skepticism. At one point, tears rolled quietly down her face. "I didn't know," she whispered again. "I know." And somehow, for the first time, I believed she really hadn't. When lunch ended, Patricia hesitated before speaking again. "How do I make this right?" I almost laughed at the impossibility of the question. You don't undo years of humiliation with one apology. Still, I answered honestly. "You stop treating me like my illness is my identity." She frowned slightly. "I don't understand." "I don't want pity," I explained. "I don't want everyone staring at me every time I sit down or leave early or look tired. I just want to exist normally." Patricia nodded slowly. "Inclusion," she murmured. "Yes. Not special treatment. Not skepticism. Just humanity." Over the next month, small things began changing. Not dramatic things. Quiet things. Vanessa started texting me articles she found interesting about chronic pain research. Sometimes she'd send memes, too, awkwardly trying to rebuild normalcy between us. Richard changed in subtler ways. Instead of asking, "How are you feeling?" every 5 minutes at family events, he started asking about books I liked, movies, work projects, normal conversation. It sounds small, but after years of feeling like the sick girlfriend, being treated like a full person again nearly made me emotional. Then came Daniel's aunt's birthday dinner in February, the first major family gathering since Christmas. I almost backed out twice. "You don't have to go," Daniel reminded me gently while I got ready. "I know. Seriously, nobody will blame you." "That's exactly why I want to go. Because for the first time, I wasn't attending to prove anything." When we arrived, my stomach twisted so tightly I thought I might get sick. But something felt different immediately. Patricia greeted me carefully, not performatively. She hugged me once and quietly said, "I'm glad you came." No dramatic apology, no emotional scene, just sincerity. During dinner, I noticed subtle things. A comfortable chair already saved for me near the quieter side of the room. Patricia redirecting conversations whenever relatives started asking invasive questions about health. Vanessa casually changing seats so I'd have more space. Richard quietly bringing me water before I even asked. No one made a spectacle out of it. And somehow, that mattered most. Halfway through dessert, one of Daniel's cousins complained about chronic migraines and frustration with doctors dismissing her symptoms. Before I could even react, Patricia spoke up. "You need to advocate for yourself," she said firmly, "and find specialists who actually listen." The entire table went quiet for a second, because everyone heard it. Everyone noticed the difference. Patricia glanced toward me briefly, not asking for approval, just acknowledging the moment. Later that night, as Daniel drove us home beneath glowing streetlights, he reached over and squeezed my hand. "You okay?" I looked out the window for a long moment, then smiled softly, cautiously. He laughed quietly. "That's fair. Because trust doesn't return all at once. It rebuilds itself slowly. Conversation by conversation, action by action, choice by choice." And even now, part of me still waited for the other shoe to drop. But another part of me, the exhausted woman who spent years apologizing for existing, was finally starting to breathe differently. Lighter. Like maybe I didn't need universal approval to deserve love. Maybe I never did. Spring arrived slowly that year, the kind of slow that sneaks in quietly, softer air through open windows, longer evenings, sunlight lingering across kitchen counters after dinner. And somewhere between February and April, something inside me began healing too. Not physically. Fibromyalgia doesn't disappear because life becomes emotionally easier. I still had flare-ups, still had mornings where my body felt impossibly heavy, still dealt with exhaustion that arrived without warning and pain that made ordinary tasks feel cruel. But emotionally, I stopped feeling ashamed. That was new. For years, every symptom had carried guilt attached to it. Every canceled plan felt like failure. Every request for rest felt selfish. Now, slowly, that guilt was loosening its grip. And a huge part of that was Daniel. One evening, after a particularly bad pain day, I apologized automatically when he brought dinner into the bedroom. "I'm sorry you have to deal with this." The words slipped out before I could stop them. Daniel froze halfway to the bed. Then he set the tray down carefully and looked at me with exhausted disbelief. "Emily," he said softly, "why are you apologizing for being sick, like it's something you did wrong?" I opened my mouth. Nothing came out, because I didn't actually know anymore. The habit was simply buried that deep. Daniel sat beside me and brushed hair gently away from my forehead. "You know what I realized after Christmas?" he asked quietly. "What?" "That you spent years trying to earn basic kindness from people who should have given it freely." Tears burned unexpectedly behind my eyes. "And the worst part," he continued, "is that you got so used to defending yourself, you started doing it even when nobody was attacking you." That one hurt because it was true. I had built my entire personality around making my illness easier for other people to tolerate, smiling through pain, minimizing symptoms, avoiding inconvenience, being easy, as if suffering politely made me more deserving of compassion. Daniel kissed my forehead gently. "You don't have to earn rest," he whispered. I cried after he fell asleep that night, not because I was sad, because I finally understood how deeply I had abandoned myself, trying to survive other people's judgment. A week later, Patricia invited us to dinner again. Not a holiday, not a birthday, just dinner. The simplicity of the invitation made it strangely more meaningful. I still hesitated before agreeing. Daniel noticed immediately. "We can leave any time," he reminded me. "I know. And if she says anything, even remotely inappropriate, she won't." He raised an eyebrow. "You sound confident." I surprised myself by smiling faintly. "No," I admitted. "I just think she's scared of losing you again." When we arrived, Patricia was in the kitchen finishing pasta sauce while Richard set the table. Vanessa lounged on the couch, scrolling through her phone. The scene felt so painfully ordinary that, for a moment, it was hard to connect it with the same house where Christmas dinner had exploded. Patricia looked up nervously when I walked in. Then her eyes landed briefly on the container in my hands. "You brought dessert?" "Daniel asked me to make brownies." Patricia blinked, like the answer emotionally affected her more than it should have. "That was nice of you." Not manipulative, not loaded, just genuine appreciation. Dinner itself felt cautious at first, like everyone was still learning a new language. But gradually, conversation loosened. Vanessa talked about a disastrous work presentation. Richard complained about a neighbor who kept stealing his newspaper. Daniel teased me for always beating him at crossword puzzles. Normal. God, I had missed normal. At one point, I stood to help clear dishes, and Patricia immediately said, "Leave those, Emily." I froze slightly, worried pity was creeping back in. But then she added awkwardly, "You cooked dessert. Seems fair." And somehow, that tiny clarification mattered enormously. She wasn't treating me like fragile glass, just family. Later, while Daniel and Richard argued over baseball in the living room, Patricia quietly approached me in the kitchen. "I wanted to ask you something." I looked up cautiously. She hesitated. "Would it bother you if I corrected people when they say ignorant things about fibromyalgia?" The question surprised me. "I don't mean publicly embarrassing anyone," she added quickly. I keep hearing people say the same things I used to say." Her face tightened with shame. "And now it makes me sick." I leaned lightly against the counter. "You don't have to become my bodyguard." "I know. Honestly, sometimes I'd rather not discuss my health at all." Patricia nodded immediately. "Okay." Then she paused. "But if someone attacks you the way I did," emotion thickened her voice, "I'd like the chance to do better." For a second, neither of us spoke. Then I nodded once. "I think I'd like that too." Her eyes filled instantly, not dramatic tears, quiet ones. The kind people cry when guilt finally softens into humility. By early summer, the changes in the family became undeniable. Vanessa had transformed most unexpectedly. One afternoon, she invited me for coffee alone. I almost declined out of sheer anxiety, but curiosity won again. Halfway through our drinks, she stared down into her latte and sighed. "You know what's awful?" "What?" "I genuinely thought I was a good person." Her bluntness startled a laugh out of me. Vanessa groaned. "No, seriously. I recycle, I volunteer, I donate money. I considered myself open-minded." She looked up miserably. And then I realized how easily I mocked something I didn't understand because Mom normalized it. I studied her quietly. "I think a lot of people do that." "Yeah, but most people don't humiliate their brother's girlfriend at Christmas dinner." "Fair point." Vanessa rubbed her forehead. "I'm trying to figure out why I needed you to be exaggerating." That sentence hit deeper than she realized. Because that was the real question. Why do healthy people sometimes become angry at invisible suffering? Eventually, Vanessa answered it herself. "I think," she said slowly, "if your illness was real, then it meant bad things could happen randomly to good people." I blinked, and that scared me. For once, her honesty carried no ego, just uncomfortable truth. People want suffering to make sense. They want to believe illness happens for reasons, that hard work protects you, that discipline saves you, because otherwise, the world becomes unpredictable, and unpredictability terrifies people. By August, even extended family dynamics had shifted. At barbecues or birthdays, nobody made passive-aggressive jokes anymore. If I sat down quietly, nobody stared. If Daniel and I left early, No one acted offended. But the biggest change wasn't theirs. It was mine. I stopped monitoring myself constantly, stopped overperforming wellness, stopped smiling through agony just to make other people comfortable. Very carefully. In the car, Daniel glanced over at me while headlights stretched across the highway. "You know what's different now?" he asked. "What?" "You don't look afraid before family gatherings anymore." The realization startled me. Because he was right. I used to spend hours mentally preparing for judgment before every event. Now I simply existed. The final moment that truly changed something inside me happened unexpectedly in late September. Patricia and I were shopping together for Daniel's birthday dinner when her arthritis flared badly while reaching for something on a high shelf. Pain flashed openly across her face before she could hide it. Instinctively, I reached for the item instead. Our eyes met. And for the first time, there was no pride between us. No performance. Just two women quietly understanding each other's pain. Patricia exhaled shakily. "I spent so many years believing endurance was the same thing as strength." I nodded softly. "A lot of people do." She looked at me carefully. "You taught me otherwise." Emotion caught unexpectedly in my throat, because for so long I thought this story was about proving my illness was real. But it wasn't. It was about learning that my worth had never depended on whether people believed me. I spent years trying to convince others I deserved compassion. Now, I simply refused to accept cruelty anymore. And strangely enough, that changed everything. Looking back now, I'm almost grateful Christmas dinner happened the way it did. Not because the humiliation didn't hurt, it did, deeply. But because sometimes people don't change until the damage becomes impossible to ignore. Patricia needed consequences to confront herself. Vanessa needed shame to recognize her ignorance. Daniel needed to stop keeping peace at my expense. And I needed to stop begging for permission to exist exactly as I was. Living with chronic illness is exhausting. But living while constantly defending your reality, that's even harder. Now, I save my energy for people who choose understanding over judgment, for people who listen, for people who love without requiring proof. And finally, I've learned to include myself in that group too.